Greetings, my friendly targets. I'm back in game for a little while, the bug bit, and it just so happened to line up with the winter event, so we've been having a lot of fun taking advantage of that. I'm a bit rusty, and most of these kills are all just memes, nothing serious. It'll take me a little while to get the hang of the new mechanics in low sec with all the changes to faction warfare. I do like what I see, and the quality of life improvements to the game since I stopped playing are pretty nice. We're going to be testing out a couple different ships and fits in this video, but once I die, the video ends. Starting out with the good old humble Vexer, king of faction warfare plexing. Well, last time I was in the game, I don't know if that's still the case, but it's a brawling powerhouse. This one I've set up specifically to apply a lot of damage very quickly and catch people off guard. This was either my second or third night back in the game. I was running around just doing some cheap combat anomalies. I was on my way home and I ran across this flashy Vexer. He was baiting some miners at an ice field. I didn't have a scram on my ship at the time, but I figured this might work to my advantage. See, this Vexer pumps out almost 1,000 DPS, and with the web and no scram, it might give my opponent some time to realize, well, he's probably just a high-sec mission runner, he's no threat, until they realize that they're dying. He's focused on my drones, which is great because the blasters alone do almost 500 DPS, so that's still a considerable amount of damage. And at some point, when his shield gets low enough, he's going to have to decide to try and shoot me. Now, a random Legion decloaked and got the kill for this. I think I did like 90-something% of the damage. He did apply a disruptor, which is good in our situation because I don't know if this guy was going to try and warp off. I never saw him try to align to anything, so I don't think he would have, even if this Legion didn't show up. But the web and an overheated afterburner on this Vexer, and he really had a hard time tracking me, even when he did decide to try and shoot me. So that was fun. My first kill back in the game. Now, the fit's pretty straightforward. You can decide whether or not to use a web or a scram. The web has benefits in catching your target off guard, making them think maybe you're not a PvPer, you're just a Care Bear that suddenly does a lot of damage, or it'll help you kill small targets very quickly. However, for prolonged fights, obviously the scram gives you a better chance of your target not getting away. 2 large shield extenders. I'm using electron blasters, although I think I did tweak this fit a little bit to upgrade to ions after this fight. So just a little bit more damage. But between electrons and ions, there's a very little damage increase. Maybe like 90 to 100 DPS. I can't remember. This tracks better, though. At the time of the fight, I don't think I had any combat implants, but if you mix this fit with some Nirvanas, you should get one heck of a buffer out of it. Rigs are all core defense field extenders. I am using 2 Republic Fleet large shield extenders. I don't really think that's necessary for the target you'll be fighting in this ship, but I had them, so I just threw them on there. But it looks like you'll be able to fit the Tech 2s just barely. Might require a cheap implant for a CPU, but other than that, if you're well skilled, you'll be good to go. Alright, we're going to move on to a couple of loot pinatas. The event has called a lot of Marauders to the field. It seems like these are becoming cheaper and easier to get, or ISK is just easier to get in the game. I don't know, but they are everywhere in the combat sites. So here I'm in a full newt dummy, 2 heavy and 4 medium newts in the highs, and then heavy drones for a little bit of damage. This Dominix really can't run the sites. I mean, it technically does in case you get caught in one. It's just so slow and you have to keep recalling your drones. But since there's so many Marauders on the field, and they're pretty much rendered immobile during the event, most of them use tractor beams or a mobile tractor unit to pull in the loot. So I was using this to my advantage. I'd come into the site, I'd sit there, and once the battleship spawned, I would move to intersect between the Marauder and the battleship that they're killing. This way, once they tractor beam the wreck, they bring it right to me, and I can steal it. Now, please forgive my butterfingers during the fight. I'm still a bit rusty getting back into the game. I was sloppy getting all my modules on and taking my drugs. But once we got settled in, the newts did all the work. Not a lot of DPS from this dummy. I think it's like 600-ish. I can't remember. It's not much. So it takes a while to whittle this guy down, and we'll skip ahead in the fight and show you that juicy kill mail. But I think the Paladin is probably the best target for this setup. For some reason, he had a really hard time tracking me, and then obviously the newt shut everything off, including his damage. I was way over-tanked in this fight, but I didn't know what to expect, really.
Our module has run out of charges.
The loot fairy on this one was pretty decent. I ended up getting 1.8 bill for the 2 mutated webifiers, like immediately, and the other items that dropped were pretty good too. I don't think he had a single bit of Tech 2 on his ship except for the guns. If you ever do get a Marauder kill, make sure you bookmark the wreck, even if you can't get the loot. I came back and salvaged this for over 100 mil worth of salvage. Now, admittedly, this trick's only going to work a few times, and usually in the early days of events. The later days tend to have the more experienced players still grinding them out, as the newer players have found it to be too much of a hassle to try and take on these sites. CCP's made them pretty hard to run solo for low skill point players efficiently. I mean, I see a lot of new players in Praxis doing just fine, but it takes them so much longer to run these sites that they don't tend to stick around as long as the advanced players. Now, when I do steal the loot, I don't stick around for very long. I'll tend to head to the next site, mainly just to make it a little less obvious that I'm trying to bait them, more that I'm trying to steal the loot and get away.
Warp drive active.
This is a player I had been using that strategy on and ping-ponging around a few of the systems for about an hour. Eventually, I guess he decided he'd had enough. I stole the loot and began to align to the next site when he began shooting at me. I didn't quite expect it, so I was a little slow to react, but it's a golem, he's not going anywhere. It doesn't really matter. Now, I knew the paladin was going to be an easy target for this ship, and I'd seen a lot of them, so I was kind of banking on more paladins. I was worried about the golem because he's going to apply pretty much full damage to a Dominic's. I had put a prop mod on and got rid of the grappler for this specific fight in hopes that the afterburner might mitigate a tiny bit of damage. I have no idea if it does. But one major advantage is the reactive armor hardener, which is perfect for a golem because after a few cycles, I'm pretty much stacked against whatever damage he's shooting at me. Anyways, we nude him out and slowly whittle him down. I wasn't sure what drones to put on him. The sight makes people tank EM and thermal. The golem's weakest to that. He might have plugged the hole. But explosive's going to be pretty hard to break through a golem. And then thermal is going to be even harder due to its natural resist and the fact that the event gives a plus 10% bonus to thermal resistance. So I decided just to use the predators in hopes that if I shut off any active hardeners that might be plugging his hole, they would get to him quickly. For serious PvP, I would probably have a large cargo container in my hold full of cap boosters so I could squeeze in one extra cap booster. I was a bit lazy, and I still needed some room to steal loot because the event site loot actually takes a decent amount of cargo space. So I'm only running off of 7+1 cap boosters in this fit. So to help compensate for that, knowing my targets are mostly going to be stationary Marauders, I put 2 large capacitor batteries in the mid slots, and that saved a lot of cap boosters while nuding out targets in most situations. I probably would have ran out had I not had those on this golem because it took a while to drain him out. Now, one booster that's dropping quite often in this event, which you should take advantage of because they're limited time boosters, they're only good till February. I forget what it's called. You can check them, but one of them actually reduces the heat damage taken when overheating modules. And after this fight, I started using that so that I could overheat my newts for longer and my afterburner as well. Now, not to hurt my strategy, but for players who find themselves on the other side of this engagement, in his situation what he would have wanted to do is ungroup his launchers and load different ammo types to help mix up my armor hardener. And that might have been enough to punch through me, but I doubt he had anything other than EM for the event. Not nearly as lucrative as our first loot pinata, but a decent drop. And the pilot was pretty chill after the fight. He applauded me on my strategy, and we both went our separate ways. And as a PvP pilot, you gotta love it when you undock and somebody challenges you to a duel. Of course, I was in a Varga at the time, and I was just set up for running the sites. This ship completely annihilates the sites, but they're obviously not a fair fight. So I accepted his request and reshipped into a Vexer. One quality of life improvement they made to the game since I've been gone is the fact that you can now jump into as many different clones as you want, as often as you want, so long as they're in the same station. I think I got that right. During the event, I was bouncing between different clone sets, whether I was running the sites or fighting in a shield buffer fit, an active shield fit, an armor fit. And in this case, I was still in my Asclepians for the Dominics when I was killing the previous Marauders, and just came in handy. So I really like that change because it means I'm not stuck flying a certain type of ship for 24 hours, give or take, depending on your skills, so long as I have them all in the same station. Anyways, I thought this was a newer pilot, and I checked him because I was considering letting him go. I'll let go of the new bros when I know I'm going to win a fight, but character said he was from like years and years ago, so I don't know if it was a purchased account or something. Maybe he's just getting back into the game, but his character was old enough to be familiar with losing ships, so I decided to go ahead and take this kill. And for the record, he challenged me, so, that's fair game as far as I'm concerned. Here's a random insta-lock speedful kill on the undock when I saw a flashy dock up behind me. That's always convenient. Recording started a bit late on this one, but pretty much the same strategy with the Nudie Domini, except this time a Praxis. Some of the Praxis I've seen running around are a bit loot pinatas themselves, so we were kind of hoping for the best here. Now, these are actually a bit trickier than a Paladin or a Golem, because they're not stationary. So having the Afterburner helps here, and the Scram making sure he can't get away with a MWD. The Newts would shut off any active modules like webs or grapplers if he stuck around long enough to stay within range. The trickiest part about him not being a stationary target isn't necessarily the fight itself, it's mainly that it's harder to steal the loot. When they're not stuck in place by a Bastion module, intersecting the loot is a bit tricky. And when they're using mobile depots, it's a lot easier because you know exactly where the loot's going to go, so keep that in mind. This can be a bit tricky because he'll have Caldari Navy Wasp, which are kinetic, and what I assume are rapid light EM missiles, Mjolnirs. And when the rapid lights go on reload, the reactive hardener will spool up fully in the kinetic side, meaning that once he starts shooting me with the rapid lights again, he actually does more damage than most of the Marauders I fought. Most. This can make it a bit tricky because the two different damage types will split your reactive armor hardener, but at least it's only 2 and not 3 or 4, so it's not a big deal. Luckily, you can use any damage type you want on a Praxis other than thermal during the event, because they will have higher resistances to thermal, but everything else is equal across the board, so explosive or EM drones is fine. They're probably going to plug the EM hole for the event, so I just stuck with explosive. Fun fact for newer players who are running these sites for maximum profit, you can click on the battleship rat, go to show info and then the attributes tab, and it'll show you what it's weakest to. It turns out it's EM damage because they're shield tanked for the event, and they're weakest to EM. It doesn't really matter what the smaller rats are weaker to, it's probably EM, but whoever gets the most damage on the battleship gets the rights to the loot, so keep that in mind. I completely forgot that frigate escape bays were a thing on battleships now, and this pilot was pretty clever. I got really lucky in this situation. Once he entered his frigate, he went to scoop his own loot. I didn't even realize he was doing that at the time. I was just locking him up so I could get an extra kill. When I looked at the kill mails, I was a bit excited to see double the loot drops, but it turns out it was just him scooping his original loot. The lucky thing is that the loot fairy gave me all the shiny stuff back from the Heron kill, his escape frigate, and I didn't lose any of it in a double kill mail. Strategy for more mobile targets needs to change a bit. Obviously, I don't need all the nuding pressure on everything I fight. I looked at this pilot, and he was a bit of an underskilled pilot flying an expensive ship. This is a Megathron Navy issue. I don't know if I've ever actually fought one of these before, definitely solo. Anyways, I'm in the new Cyclone fleet issue. The ship I'm just been messing around with. I'm using an oversized afterburner, a massive shield buffer, and about 1,000 DPS. It's a really fast ship. Now, pretty much strategy in this situation is just try and get to the loot before he can, because he's pretty fast for a battleship. I think he's zipping around with micro warp drive when it comes time to get the loot, but I got lucky because the battleship rat decided to web him and not me. So we've all heard the saying, don't fly what you can't afford to lose. It's often that I'll rent ships for events, like ships that I don't normally fly, things I don't want to lose in PvP, but I know they're fairly safe to use in events like this, which I think is what he might have been doing. He was a bit of an underskilled player, flying a very expensive ship relative to his character. With a bit of guidance from his courtmates, this would be fine, as he could purchase the ship, use it for the event, and then resell it afterwards, so he's not really losing any money, and he has a lot of potential to gain. But for him, the unfortunate issue is that he appeared to not be very experienced when it came to bait, or simply underestimated his target. When I stole the loot from him, any player in his situation with his amount of skill points should have not taken this bait, but I guess for some reason he thought he could take on a Cyclone fleet issue because he's in a fleet battleship. Any number of situations could have been going on, but here's how it played out. Here I know that I likely have more DPS than him, and if I shoot the rat with my guns, it's going to hurt me in two situations. One, I'll probably get rights to the wreck, and I don't think he's going to try and steal it. And two, I won't have a full barrage to take out his buffer, which I'm probably going to need. So I just put my drones on it to make it look like I'm attempting to get the kill, but I know I'm not going to. I consumed one of the temporary Nirvana boosters that's dropping in the event. This gives you a shield buffer bonus, which is perfect for this ship. Combined with my Nirvanas, I think that pushes it up to like 120k EHP, which is a lot. And the Cyclone fleet issue, or the Republic fleet issue, Cyclone, whatever it's called, it has a signature reduction bonus. Now, normally a ship with an oversized afterburner is really slow and cumbersome. As you can see here, I still am, but he's either going to be webbing or grappling me or both, and that oversized prop mod is going to help to slowly push through that. Combined with my lower signature radius bonus, I figure that's probably helping somewhat, although putting all the shield extenders on my ship might cancel out that bonus, but you know, it helps, I think. He can barely hit me, even with the web or grappler on me. Our next target is a Varga, which is probably going to be the most challenging thing to shoot at in this Dominix. They have really good tracking, they do a lot of damage very quickly, and their tank is quite considerable. They're basically just harder to deal with than any of the other Marauders, in my opinion. I personally fly one of these as a PvE ship. Needless to say, I don't bling it out because I don't want to be a target for gankers, but even with a full Tech 2 fit, these things are devastating. For most of the targets I've been going up against, I haven't bothered to check their Z-kill, but checking this pilot's would have probably helped me reconsider these decisions. So anyways, same strategy in this fight. My slow reaction times were contrasted against this pilot. He was not hesitant at all to take care of the problem. And with kind of a similar strategy that I was running on the Vexer earlier, does not need a point to get an easy kill, that's for sure. In high sec, solo going up against other Marauders is tricky. Obviously, we've found a way to deal with it. But when it comes to the Varga, there's only one strategy which I can think of that might work, considering if you don't have any backup and you're just going toe-to-toe with a Varga, and that's to simply